Hacking and cracking. Early online and hacking. As a young boy with access to an Apple II, but otherwise country dirt poor, I did not have money for computer games. My stepfather Sam had purchased a 300 baud dial-up modem. It was a headphone-like device that home telephone handsets were physically plugged into to let a computer talk over a normal telephone line with another computer. But modems use telephone numbers, and calling long distance cost money. At least it did in the time. Which again, we did not have. I found local numbers, or exceptionally low-cost local-ish numbers that had computer bulletin board systems, which behind the scenes often hosted hidden pirated games. As in, cracked games that anyone could copy if they could access that phone number. I would find them, download them, and of course, play them. Yay! No or low money games for me. I felt they are digital, and I cannot buy them anyway, so I was not taking anything from anyone else. That was perhaps bad thinking then, but it is what I thought, and no one questioned that way of thinking. In fact, I was encouraged. I eventually managed to save money though, over a couple of years of doing chores and picking strawberries for a nearby Japanese family that had a strawberry farm. Yeah, it's another way I made money. I made between 1 nickel and 25 cents per basket, which of course varied based on the time of year and their demand. But it adds up over time. So yeah, in fact, I was encouraged to download and copy games for my use, presumably because we had no money and my parents just wanted to look the other way so that I would have some games. A hacker friend online from a bulletin board system, BBS, invited me to join another BBS called The Hidden Fortress. By that time, I had made a name for myself in the software cracker circle. Cracking software meant you took software that was protected by some kind of copy protection, and you removed that copy protection so that other people could copy and use the software. Let me just restate that. Cracking software was removing copy protection that was placed on software. On games, that a cracker, a hacker that specialized in breaking and removing software protections, could remove so that everyone could freely copy, share, and use that software, that game. I was the Code Warrior, a handle named after the Road Warrior of a movie in the era, but for programming, code obviously. So I was the Code Warrior. The Hidden Fortress was a select, invitation-only hacker and cracker paradise. Hackers used phone systems to break into government and online systems. Crackers cracked software and ciphers to gain access to things, usually removing protections and sometimes modifying the very software target. I joined the Hidden Fortress for many years. Later on, I also joined an odd social network that was on a bulletin board system. It was called Trix, T-R-I-X. It was a weird mix of oddballs and outcasts from the computer and alternative lifestyle worlds. The computer, Trix, and the Hidden Fortress were my safe places amidst an otherwise tormenting, unstable home life and childhood. I withdrew as Spock, a Star Trek character of logic and reason, into my hacker and cracker technology first world. It's where I was comfortable and safe. In my hacker world, I had control and I was safe. I learned so much from the Hidden Fortress as Spock. I learned so much from Trix as a Kirk from Star Trek. Not just a Spock, because Kirk was all about emotion and human interaction and influence, where Spock was all about logic, reasoning, and learning. So there it was. I learned about human interactions, people, and influence in the real world as Kirk. And I learned more about hacking and cracking from the Hidden Fortress as Spock. I met my ex-wife through Trix, as she was a hacker groupie that was into people like a man called Captain Crunch of the era. As an aside, No, he was not the serial Captain Crunch of the era, but he was a hacker that named himself after the cereal. In fact, my ex-wife knew Captain Crunch because he grew up in her neighborhood. He was one of the reasons that she became fascinated with hackers and techies. It sounds crazy, but a hacker in the Bay Area was eating Captain Crunch cereal when he came upon a pack-in toy whistle. It was a common thing in the era to pack in toys with cereals for children. This toy was just a simple plastic whistle. Captain Crunch was walking around blowing his silly crunch whistle when he thought to make a telephone call, and inadvertently blew the whistle after he picked up the telephone. Something extraordinary happened though. The phone beeped at him. Yeah, it beeped back, and it gave him an odd dial tone. As a curious hacker, Captain Crunch played around with his whistle and the telephone. He found that he could always trigger the phone responding in this beep state. He found that once in that state, the keypad could issue commands to some kind of remote telephone system. It was all about maintenance by the telephone company. The idea was that service techs could trigger a test state remotely using a device that emitted tones that the phone was listening for. Cleverly, Captain Crunch built what became known as the Blue Box. It was a little, yes, blue box. He attached a keypad, potentiometer, and a speaker to it. He evolved his blue box over the ages, gaining different colors to signify their capabilities from revisions, with each having more capabilities than the last. The keypad would emit standard telephone key tones, and the potentiometer could emit a range of tones as well. The blue box allowed Captain Crunch to operate as a full-access control technician over the telephone system, which included untracked, uncharged, unlimited telephone calls anywhere in the world. Captain Crunch was the architect of calling free without tracking for hackers everywhere worldwide. Also, there was a service back then that hackers and crackers used often. It was called PC Pursuit. The idea was that there was a PC telecom hub physically located in each major city, which allowed people to dial into the hub using a modem, and the hub in turns would contact other hubs in faraway locations, and thus you could call relatively local phone numbers to talk again anywhere in the world. Telecoms offered PC Pursuit to mega corporations and the government to give secure, untraced computer communications, albeit at a subscription fee. Hackers enjoyed PC Pursuit for free because, well, they hacked into it, and they feigned being government credentialed. Thus, they were untraced and could call anywhere in the world using PC Pursuit and its hub connections. When I was invited to join the Hidden Fortress, I was given PC Pursuit login credentials and details, and I was off to the races with untraceable calling anywhere in the world to find and download games. Like my rationale for copying games, I justified hijacking PC Pursuit so I could call all over the world, including the United Kingdom, because without money to buy or make phone calls, I could never have paid for it anyway. And since it was all digital, no one was out anything, I reasoned. And thus, I was able to learn and have a lot of fun at no one's expense. It was all digital. Time would prove that I gave back to the world by creating jobs and livelihoods, wisdom through my immersive stories, and I honestly just gave people good times. My early access to digital copies of games throughout the world paid off for the world. So I do think in the end I was justified. The Hidden Fortress was a source of huge array of pirated software. It had games and applications alike, but mostly games. Hundreds and hundreds of games flowed through the Fortress, BBS, every month for its members to download and distribute themselves throughout the world. It was a gold mine of software and games for me. Friends of mine coined me as the South County Software Exchange because I would trade copies of my software that I obtained from the Hidden Fortress for other pirated software and bring that back to the Hidden Fortress for credit as a contributor. The gaming life exploded with access to virtually every game and piece of software in existence. Unfortunately, the Hidden Fortress was not only about software. It included subversive, even anarchist things like zip gun schematics for untraceable firearms, phone numbers to police and courts and banks and government systems, all to accommodate hacking them, along with credential confidence in how to access police and FBI records, and so much more. There was even an anarchist international book and blueprints for things like how to build nuclear bombs. While pirated software was illegal, I had no idea if the other content was legal or not. But honestly, I did not care at the time. It was all very exciting to me, really. The hubris of the founders of the Hidden Fortress and most of its elite members was unmatched. They felt that they were gods of computers and were untouchable by mortals without their technocracy powers. They started hacking banks to transfer funds that they would use to buy things that they wanted, of course. Every successful transaction emboldened them, and they went further and further each time. A reporter heard of the Hidden Fortress and decided to write an article defaming hackers and their wickedness and their disregard for law and people. The article vilified hacking and cited details that were blatantly about the Hidden Fortress, or at least so concluded the fortress's elite. The Hidden Fortress unleashed its fury upon that reporter. Bank accounts gone. Credit cards max charged. Traffic citations, unpaid tickets, and warrants issued. But that was, they hoped, enough to educate the wayward reporter for daring to disrespect the hacker institution. Well, it mostly worked. The Hidden Fortress was successful. They decimated the reporter that dared to harshly challenge and judge them and the Hidden Fortress. They made that reporter penniless on paper and gave bogus legal issues that had to be resolved. The reporter naturally, though, contacted the police, who in turn called the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI. Neither were pleased with the overt aggressive actions by these hackers. It did not take long for the FBI to arrest Hidden Fortress members that were based in the United States. Fortress elites that lived abroad went dark to avoid being targeted by their local constabulary. The state's Fortress elites were charged and convicted for numerous cyber crimes. Back then, much of these sorts of crimes were new, and they were complicated to prosecute. Consequently, many charges revolved around piracy and terrorism across the states and internationally. It was serious. The Hidden Fortress was no longer hidden.